I'll be showing you a video summarizing the entirety of Eren's character.
立てよ父さん、忘れたのか。何をしにここに来たのか。犬に食われた妹に報いるためだ。復権派の仲間に第二クルーが報いるために進み続けるんだ。死んでも死んだ後も。これは父さんが始めた物語だ。
エレン。
I'll use one of his quotes to start this video. If someone tries to take my freedom away, I won't hesitate to take theirs. He is the prime example of the protagonist turned antagonist. Remember the 5 anime villains who were right video where Eren was on the list? Well, he's the most recent example of a protagonist villain done right. Eren's journey throughout the series isn't just about fighting against the Titans. It reflects complex philosophical dilemmas that challenge our perception of right and wrong. With that being said, let's begin discussing the philosophy of Eren Yeager. The transformation of a hero to an anti-hero will always remain one of the more interesting character arcs in any storytelling process. Such a reversal also muddles the conventional boundaries of good and evil, thus forcing an audience to reassess its notion of morality, justice, or even the human condition. These gradual shifts often turn a loved protagonist into a much darker, more complex one, mirroring the complexity of any real dilemmas where right or wrong is always blurred. For this reason, such arcs appeal to audiences not because they are unexpected, but because they reflect the inherent duality within us all. This video aims to trace Eren's transformation into what he has become, point out a few important moments wherein he seems to have fallen from grace, and talk about the richness of this character and complexity. At the beginning of this tale, Eren wanted nothing more than to join the scout regiment and venture outside the walls to slice as many Titans as possible. In his words, he would kill every Titan in the world, but for that, he would have to become the strongest soldier. In what is considered one of the biggest anime twists of all time, Eren Yeager turned out to be the very thing he hated the most. After his big reveal as the Attack Titan, Eren's course of action took a 360 turn, and his chances of reaching his goal increased exponentially. However, the closer he got to learning the truth about his Titan powers and his father's basement, the foggier his reasoning for killing pure Titans became. The most significant change in Eren's personality came at the hands of his father, Grisha Yeager. Not only was he not from the island, but he was also a key player who set things in motion 5 years ago and was responsible for making Eren a Titan. Eren's mentality was hit substantially with Reiner and Bertholdt's betrayal, the truth about the walls, and Historia Reese's history. These events altered his initial concept and feelings about freedom, and he soon realized that the war wouldn't simply be over by killing all Titans or going outside the walls. The real battle is beyond the land that the scouts could never venture into if it wasn't for Eren, but the toll of that achievement was too high for him. It's easier to admit that Eren Yeager was too gullible or a weak character who couldn't stand the pressure of doing the right thing. However, the thing that shook his moral compass for good was knowing the future. The moment he kissed Historia's hand, Eren's mind became a mush of his scars and the ones he'll inflict. After that fateful ceremony, something snapped in Eren, and he slowly descended into the chaos he would be unleashing into the world. He became detached from the people around him, and his eyes no longer shined with the idea of finally being freed from the Titans. Eren Yeager saw everything he would do in the future, ironically setting him down the path he had been avoiding all along. There's one explanation that fans think explains why Eren never tried to change the future. No matter what he tried, the future took a similar course. Eren Yeager gave in to the consequences of his actions, which significantly diluted his sense of righteousness. When he visited his father's memories with Zeke, he admitted to his brother that being violent is who he truly is. However, he was only reflecting on his actions when he had no choice but to do the impossible, like when he had to kill a man to protect Mikasa. He was repeating the same thing with the rumbling, and he used the excuse of being naturally violent to justify his actions to others. But perhaps in truth, the knowledge of his omnipotence and heretic course strengthened the idea that there's no choice for him but to go through with his plans. Hajime Isayama's writing isn't without purpose, even for a single scene. There are subtle details that foreshadow a critical aspect of the plot, and Eren's character is no exception to that rule. Eren's whole experience in the Marley territory is a creeping revelation, as he does not believe there's another way. It's safe to say that besides knowing the future, the truth of what Marley had been doing to Paradis Island sort of traumatized him to a point where he felt what he would do in the future was the only option. He may have led himself to believe that visiting Marley might change his views at some point, but that was next to impossible. The hatred that Marley and the rest of the world had for the Eldians was too deep and great to overcome by negotiations and diplomatic talks. Eren Yeager's emotions and reactions represent the hard truth about war that Hajime had so clearly tried to convey through Attack on Titan. It's difficult to pursue either party in a war when the seed of hatred has been sown for centuries. The victims on each side believe that they have a right to that hatred and, subsequently, the right to take revenge. The unspeakable things Marley did to the Eldians were inexcusable, and their pride in their destruction was enough to put a seal on Eren. To answer the question asked at the beginning of the video, Eren Yeager was never a true hero or a villain. He was as human as they can get, with faults that weren't as bad as that of a villain. He did his best to see things the right way until he couldn't because his world wasn't black or white. It was gray to a point where no one could distinguish between right and wrong. Eren made the other characters look righteous because he took it upon himself to do what he thought was the necessary evil for Paradis' survival. The equation was clear to Eren. It was either Paradis Island or the rest of the world because there was no way anyone was letting the Eldians live. Sooner or later, they would march in to take the Devils. With Eren gone, Marley would get hands-on with everything, including Historia and the Founding Titan. Maybe that's why Historia wasn't shocked about Eren's plans. She knew that his evil was essential to her and her family's survival. Eren Yeager is the type of anti-hero that would make the audience question their morality. Isayama made sure he left the audience wanting more rather than tying a knot to a story. Attack on Titan is a depiction of the horrors of actual war. The casualties on both sides are usually the ones to lose it all, and when someone thinks it's enough, they become the villain in someone else's story, and the cycle continues. The end credits scene in the series' final episode confirms the unsavory fact that from Eren's and Paradis' point of view, the success of the rumbling was essential to their survival. Finishing off 80% of humanity only brought Paradis Island more time. When the world was ready, they came for them, and the inevitable happened. This fact is not to justify the horrors Eren's actions caused to countless lives, but it's the cruel reality of what happens when people in power put everything at risk for their personal greed. Eren Yeager is simply a product of choice made by someone powerful once, and what came after was reminiscent of Eren's choices. He was a true anti-hero who transitioned between the roles when needed. He was a hero when Eldians needed him to fight against the Titans, and eventually transformed into a villain for the sake of Mikasa and others' survival. Thanks for watching everyone, it's a grim video than usual, I'll see you on the next one.